what do you think makes something a tale of our time?
Well, in general, I would say it's usually the kinds of stories that reflect some kind of important cultural difference or have really changed the medium, after this particular piece came out. But I think the things that people tend to spend most of their time doing and really love engaging with are just things that are the most entertaining.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Times. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so interesting, and why others could or should find meaning in them as well. This is not a spoiler-free show, so bear that in mind as you continue to listen. We tackle books, movies, podcasts, and more. Where there's a story, there's a reason to read, or watch, or play in today's case. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens. A quick note, today we're going to be discussing the story of The Witcher, but as we got started, we realized that this is really too big for us to cover in just one episode, so this will be a two-part series. In this first episode, we're going to be covering more of a summary of what happens in the books. It's going to kind of be an overview introducing us into the world of The Witcher and not going into too much detail because there are 9 books in the series. But next week, we'll get into more detail about our feelings, our experiences, and discuss some more specific stories. I hope you're looking forward to learning more about this series with me. And, of course, my guest, Chris Gorin.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Yeah, great to be back.
Yeah. And so some people may not have heard the year-end special. Is there anything you would like to say to introduce yourself?
Well, I am currently also working here at RTI, but I will shortly be moving on to another venture.
Yeah, we'll miss you.
Yeah, I'll miss it here as well. We've had a lot of conversations, I feel like, in the office, back and forth about various different things. And eventually you're like, you should come on the show sometime. So yeah, I'm happy to come on here. It was actually difficult to choose which thing to talk about. But
I actually hear that a lot, which is something that does make me happy because I love talking about, it's true what you said. But I think that's why I started this show, is because I just like talking about stories and in any medium and what catches us about them, right?
Yeah.
So I think they might be curious to know what story you've brought today.
So I decided to talk about the book series and now also video game series and TV series, The Witcher, by Andrjez Sapkowski.
Andrjez Sapkowski.
I believe that's how you say it. That's probably not the correct Polish pronunciation because he's a Polish author.
It's the anglicized Polish pronunciation.
Good enough to get through this show.
Yeah. Forgive us, Andre, but we love your material. So today we're going to be talking about the book series. And you told me something interesting right before we started that I think is worth noting. A lot of people are familiar with this series from the video games, especially the third one, which was very renowned, very
one of the best-selling games, I think.
Yeah,
of all time.
And still has a lot of staying power today. If you didn't know it from the video games, you may also know it from the Netflix show, which I watched. That's how I first got the story of it, and however you may feel about that at this current juncture, but did get a lot of attention as well. The book series, you said, is actually in the same universe, obviously, because it's about The Witcher, but takes place at least before the games.
Yeah, the TV series is a straight adaptation of the book series. So it's basically the same timeline and everything. But the games are actually different. So I didn't play the first 2 games, but I understand that in the very first game, the Witcher, the main character, Geralt of Rivia, he wakes up, it's this amnesia thing. He can't remember anything that happened, and so you, along with him, relearn all of the story of what's happened in the world.
In the books, even?
Yeah, so you learn about the things that happened before, but the actual things, the events that take place in the game take place after the last book.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just think that is worth noting for those of you who have played the game. We'll be discussing the books kind of at large. You said you think of them as more of a continuum. So we're going to do our best to tackle, there are 9 books in the series.
Yeah. It's a little bit confusing too because there are 2, the first 2 books are actually collections of short stories.
Oh,
They're
okay.
not they're actually written like in novel form. And it's kind of interesting to view the series in that progression because you can kind of see that in the beginning. I don't know if Sapkowski actually knew that it was going to expand into this like whole series of novels because the stories are pretty short.
Yeah.
And they're also trying to do something very different. Basically what he's doing in the early short stories, he's writing for some fantasy magazine in Poland.
Oh.
And
So he like collected his short fiction into books.
Yeah, I think that happened later, like once he started publishing the novels, like when they became popular, then they like republished these collections of short stories.
Wow.
And I actually don't even know all the publication history because, of course, these were written in Polish, and it was only later that they were,
Translated
released
into
English.
Yeah.
And so the publication history may not be like identical there, but the way it works in the English translations, which is the only one that I read, is there's 2 books of short stories and then 5 main novels, and then there's one. It's like a sort of standalone novel that takes place actually like in the middle of the main timeline.
Is this the one that follows the different Witcher?
No, I don't even know about that one.
Oh, okay.
So
I don't know. Maybe I actually got it wrong. There's a lot of timelines here that we could work with.
Maybe I'm just not a completist. I didn't know about that. I only knew about the sort of 7 main books and then the one like kind of standalone story.
I actually don't know if what I'm talking about is part of the books or one of the games. Like there's
No,
so much stuff here.
It may be like it's been several years, to be honest, since I've like revisited them. So maybe this actually came out more recently and I just didn't know.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you more. But so I guess, do you want to try and summarize either all the books, or are we going to summarize the main? The 5 that have a continuous story, generally speaking.
Yeah, so it's about, the most important thing is the main character, for which the series is named, his Geralt of Rivia. Rivia is like a province in the world. His character is that he's what's called a Witcher, which is a special group of
like monster fighters.
Yeah, they're humans who have been, this is a world where there's like some magic involved, and there's actually a history like to when magic started in the world. Like it used to be a normal human world, and then there was this celestial event called like the conjunction of spheres.
Oh yes.
Where basically like a portal opened up and introduced magic to the world, and so all of the non-human races and monsters are all rooted in this like one event. Anyway, after that happened, there was just a lot of monsters in the world that were really dangerous. So there's like a group of these people called Witchers who are basically chosen at birth and put through this kind of really traumatic series of both training, but also they have to drink these potions essentially that either kill you, and it kills like 2 out of 3 kids that they give this potion to.
Huge failure rate in this potion thing.
But 1 out of 3 survives, and then if they survive, they kind of have these like superhuman powers, including like they have like night vision, and just super reflexes and all this stuff.
I assume it also makes you like the typical magic potion boon of like you're stronger than the average man, you're tougher than the average person,
right.
Like you have spider senses basically for like danger.
Yeah, that's essentially it. He has spider senses, but the vision is sort of an important one because it changes your eye color.
Yeah.
So he has yellow eyes.
It's like a tell sign for regular people that this person is a Witcher.
Yeah. Anyway, at the point in which we enter his story, the Witchers are like basically most of the monsters have been dealt with. They're not killing as many people as they used to. Right.
We're past the worst of it. So this is like in a more like controlled environment in the world.
Yeah. So
we still need Witchers.
There's not many Witchers left, and they're sort of discriminated against because they're considered like mutants.
They kind of are mutants.
Yeah, they are mutants.
They are mutants. But it's not fair to discriminate against them anyway.
Right. But anyway, it's not like people love it when a Witcher shows up. They're like kind of afraid of them. They discriminate against them, and they only really want them around when a monster starts killing the villagers.
It's like, if you can't handle me at my best, you don't deserve me at my worst.
Yeah, exactly. And so his character is very, like, having dealt with this, is very bitter and
closed off.
Yeah, closed off, and he doesn't really love the people that he works for. He just kind of does it because he really can't do anything else. So he's kind of this, like, I wouldn't call him like a wandering samurai character, but there's a little bit of that. He's the drifting hero. Yeah. If not wandering samurai, because that implies like a code of ethics and honor and other things like that.
He's definitely like maybe the Western version of that, like the cowboy that came to town and I'm the only one who could take care of this problem.
Yeah.
Which is all a related trope. So
Yeah. That's a good comparison. And in fact, when the short stories started coming out, they were actually like, instead of being this big world building exercise, it was more these like sort of tongue in cheek plays on traditional fairy tales. So they would actually use like Hansel and Gretel type story.
Yeah.
There's like a Beauty and the Beast story. And then it kind of like plays with those tropes, with your expectations about what will happen there. And often does it in kind of like funny ways. Like there's definitely a sense
almost like a fractured fairy tale.
Yeah, but he's
although not
definitely
that
trying
comical.
to be like more funny and clever in the beginning.
Yeah.
But once the novels start, it becomes like a much more serious story.
Yeah. He dives down into like the dark and kind of grim and gritty.
And actually loses a lot of its humor. I mean, there's still some humor, and there's definitely one kind of like played for laughs character, which is the bard.
Yes, Gear. Yes, of course.
Right. But basically it goes into being just like a straightforward story once it gets to the novel.
Into like a gritty fantasy novel.
Yeah.
So what's the like unifying journey, I guess, that the Witcher's on in these books?
Yes, like I said, his character is very embittered, and once the novel starts, there's this great political intrigue going on, different kingdoms fighting each other, and it goes into great detail about all this. And a lot of the people who are doing the political machinations get a lot of page time with what they're doing, right?
Yes.
But the thing with The Witcher is like he just doesn't care about any of that.
Right.
They're just always trying to recruit him to their side for whatever reason. But he's, he doesn't really have a code of ethics, but one thing that he does kind of stick to is he's neutral. He does not want to get involved with any of this stuff, and he doesn't care.
Yeah.
And actually, like, this is the one part of the story I feel like maybe is a little bit deeper, because I don't want to speak for Polish people, but they are a people who have just been like thrown around by different colonial powers over the years.
Yeah, they're kind of like, they're the tug of war that everybody's like, we want you.
And there's been like major battles fought there. And, I don't know if this reflects a kind of Polish disinterest with politics because it's all like just miserable, basically. But certainly, if that's true, that comes out in the character of Geralt. But what happens, I think, already by the first novel is there's a child character that kind of comes into his life. Yeah, Ciri, who, because of like essentially a promise that he made with this one half monster, half human creature.
That turns out to be like a prince.
Yes, he turns out to be a prince, and he really wanted to get married to this princess. They use this wordplay basically where like, you have to promise me.
I remember this from the TV series. It's called like, you have to give me a gift of surprise, or like a promise of surprise.
Oh yes, the law of surprise.
Law of surprise.
You have to give them like the first thing basically that you want but you weren't expecting.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that this princess was pregnant, so now the child is promised to Geralt.
Right.
But through a series of events, he doesn't actually end up meeting her until she's like 12 years old.
Yeah.
And so then this kind of this is his only like real other motivation in life, to take care of this child that he is promised.
That he basically inherits.
It's part of his destiny, is what they always say.
Yeah.
Like his destiny is to be with this child. I should also say, though, that him and the main love interest is a sorceress named Yennefer.
Yes.
Yennefer of Vengerberg. And so he continually re-encounters her, but the thing is, with both witchers and sorceresses in this world, they cannot have children.
Because they both went through like a horrible change.
Yeah, because basically to become one of these like magical people, you lose your ability to have children. So this sort of becomes like their adopted daughter.
Yeah.
And that sort of is like the motivation throughout the story, is they keep getting separated and then refinding each other, because it may turn out that this child is like the most powerful person in the world. We can give spoilers.
It's like, this is a spoiler-free show. Like, spoil the heck out of this thing for people like me that just want to know.
Okay, so because a lot of this isn't revealed until quite late in the story.
Yeah.
But basically, she is the result of this like genetic engineering project of these sorceresses.
Oh, yes.
Who kind of like control everything.
It's a little like Dune-ish in that way.
Yeah, but no one knows except for like a few people. And basically she's like the perfect mix of human and elf. And there's some relationship to her ability to like control the spheres that let magic into the world and all of this. And so like she's either like going to destroy the whole world or save it, basically. Yeah. She's like the atomic bomb of this universe.
And then they have to raise the chosen one.
Right. And then it also turns out that in addition to being the most powerful being in the universe, she also, like, so for this whole story, there's kind of like an evil king. He's the king of the South.
Oh, yes. And he's like invading their home.
Yes, and so he's always trying
Pretty
to
effectively for the first part.
Right, and there's so much like invasion and stuff. The most important thing is like there's a very powerful southern kingdom who is moving north, and like the northern kingdoms are all trying to find a way to ally with each other, but they don't really like each other that much to like fight against him. Anyway, he's looking for Ciri through the whole story, and it turns out you find out much later that part of the reason is because he is actually the beast who was transformed back into a human. So Ciri is his daughter.
Whoa!
And that's like
he became the king again.
Well, he became the king. He changed his name. This is why like you don't recognize this and like throughout the story because he doesn't use the same name.
And you won't
see any
him
distinguishing
like,
features about his physical appearance.
Yeah.
Because mostly, but you know him as the Beast because you only see him as a human for like a little bit of the story.
Right, like at the very end when Geralt's like, good news, he's actually a person and not a monster.
Right,
and then,
so the whole time you're assuming like he just wants her to use her as a weapon, but you will find out later that another reason that he cannot like let go of her is because it's his daughter. Right,
and he probably regrets that he accidentally gave her away to some random witcher.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a big spoiler, so yeah.
That's it. You know
maybe
what?
we should have had a spoiler.
No, that's at the very beginning of this show.
Okay.
That's what people get. And if you don't want to hear about it, you gotta go to a different show.
Yeah. And one other thing I'll just say about the TV series, though, is if you've watched the TV series, you find this out much earlier.
Well, that's The Witcher.
Yeah.
At large. I guess, how does it end?
I actually haven't read the books in like a long time. What I seem to remember is that she gets captured by the king. He has this like meeting with her, and then I think like either she escapes or the Witcher breaks her out or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a little bit inconclusive actually, but
I guess that's also the question. Like sometimes these books end in a very open way, especially I would posit if it's European. It's very North American or British to want everything to wrap up neatly and have all of your loose ends tied up.
Yeah.
So
to be honest, I probably should have gone back and like reviewed because there's a lot of detail. Like I didn't even remember about the law of surprise, which is like so critical to the whole story. But I actually kind of forget what totally happens at the very end. But suffice to say, everyone is still alive.
That's good. We love to hear that. We love to see that.
And they all make it into the video game. So most of them anyway.
I guess so. Yeah. Well, because you said it continues after that.
Yeah.
I guess
there are other major characters, though. Some of the sorceress characters. There's like a lot of them. And, they're actually the ones who are running it. Like, even the kings aren't really in charge. Like, every king has a sorcerer.
It's like you get your advisor from the Magic Tower.
Yeah.
And she will be manipulating you.
Yes, and they're so, but the only problem is that like none of them have any morals, and also like the Witcher usually ends up sleeping with all of them.
That's his character too, right? Is like, I'm a macho guy. I don't catch feelings. I just catch.
Yeah, but so are they. So nobody has any emotions about anything.
Yeah,
and this is actually kind of the conflict that him and Yennefer have throughout. And so they're always kind of like getting together, but they never are together for very long in most of the story.
It's like the question of whether or not, to put it in a layman's terms, like whether or not they actually have caught feelings, or if they're just tied together by destiny. They can't escape each other.
Yeah.
Or are those the same thing?
Totally. Although I will say The Witcher seems to be much more... Like, he comes to the conclusion pretty early on that he loves her and that he kind of wants to be with her, and she's more the one always being like, nah, you don't really love me.
And she's like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I have attachment issues.
But nevertheless, like, he's not so in love with her. Like, he sleeps with lots of ladies in the story.
It's like a classical hero kind of thing, right? Where it's like, I love you, but that does not make us exclusive.
Yeah. But part of that is kind of the thing that there's a little bit salacious about the sex is very like, I won't say graphic, but there's a lot of it in the story, and it's very casual. And I think that's kind of one of the things that makes it kind of a fun story, And actually, I think the TV series has failed to capture some of that sort of fun sexuality of the book series.
I think they were trying to maybe sanitize it or keep it grittier rather than sexier.
I don't know. Do we have time for me to like complain a little bit about this?
So maybe in the next one, because actually we are all out of time for today's episode.
Okay.
It's gone by really fast, but for all of you listeners out there, thank you today for joining me and my guest, Chris Gorin, on Radio Taiwan International. This has been Tales of Our Time, the first part of our 2-part series on The Witcher, mostly focusing on the book series by Andrjez Sapkowski. Next week, we'll be back to discuss more of our opinions on it, as well as getting back to our regular questions for what makes it so interesting and our own experiences with the story. As for now, I hope that you enjoyed learning more about The Witcher, and we'll see you next time.